I want to say his daughter's running for school board.
So she's looking for probate.
Probate, that's right.
I used to do the family game night.
No. There's no there. When I was in college. I thought it was this, no, not this one. Oh, no, it is, it's this one.
Yep.
So it wasn't this one.
What's that?
We're live.
Good, all right. It's a few seconds early, but not much. Good evening, this is planning board meeting for the city of Bangor, October 15th, 2024. My name is Reese Perkins, chairman of the board. Other board members in attendance this evening are Vice Chair Ted Brush, Michael Basnet, Jonathan Boucher, Tricia Hayes, Janet Jonas, Dawn Mahar, and alternate member Jennifer King. Member King can join in deliberations on any agenda item and would vote on any item if any member is recused. Board members are volunteers from the Bangor community. City staff members in attendance this evening include Planning Officer Anya Collette, Assistant Solicitor Grace Innes, and Planning Analyst Brian Scannell. We thank all of them for their help with this meeting. The planning board has two roles, the first being a review of amendments to the land development code, which typically include either changes to zoning districts or changes to the text within the code. Our review of these amendments includes adherence to the comprehensive plan as well as considering any applicable concerns from the public. Tonight, we do not really have any amendments to the code, but we do have a review of amendments to the comprehensive plan. Our vote on this item is in the form of a recommendation to the City Council as to whether this item ought to pass or ought not to pass. The City Council makes the final decision on these changes. Second, we serve as the regulatory authority for land development permits, commonly known as site plan review, but we do not have any of those permit applications this evening, so that makes that easy. Information on the city's codes and standards, as well as the comprehensive plan, can be found on the city's website. So I've kind of pared down the introduction this evening because we don't have some of the normal stuff like land development permits. I have also messed with the agenda, so I apologize to board members, particularly if you find some of this out of order. Everything is still in there, but in working with the changes to the bylaws, you know, the history of us as a board is that we sort of got away from this old business item that most of the other boards do. And we sort of did new business and then other business. And really, old business should be in there for things such as the notices of decision and the meeting minutes from the last meeting. And so I'm sort of reinvigorating that tonight by moving those things to old business, which we will do now normally at the start of the meeting. So that will, again, the long and the short of it is if you need a moment to get where you're trying to go to review what we're talking about this evening, just let me know so I don't go too fast and kind of miss your attention. Most of the items on the agenda this evening are staff or board-led items, obviously. When we get to each item, staff and or the chair will provide a brief introduction. Further detail is in the board member packets. Once a presentation is made, we will consider any questions from the staff and board members. Depending upon the item, we may open the floor to public comments. If there are any comments from the public, we ask that person come to the podium, introduce themselves. We don't have anyone here, so this may not happen. Stay where they are from and indicate if they are for or against the proposal. Either way, it is helpful to present your thoughts based upon city code and or the comprehensive plan, as these are the primary documents used by the board to make our decisions. If you are on Zoom this evening and you want to join the meeting, please use the raised hand function and we will bring you in. Once we do have public comments, we will close that item to public comments. If a vote is required, the board will then deliberate on the item using the standards as applicable and vote on the proposal. So getting to the agenda this evening now, the old business, the first item is adoption of notice of decision for 759 Ohio Street. That is the County Properties LLC project. And so if anyone has any concerns or questions about that, board members, please bring them up. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion that we accept the notice of decision for 759 Ohio Street. Member Boucher.
Chair, I move for the adoption notice of decision for 759 Ohio Street, County Properties LLC.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have adopted the notice of decision for that project unanimously. And then I'll go to the meeting minutes for the October 1st, 2024 meeting. And would hear any board members if they have concerns regarding those meeting minutes. And any questions on anything? If not, then I would entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes for October 1st, 2024. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the minutes as presented for the meeting of October 1st, 2024.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that one? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So unanimous approval of the meeting minutes from the last meeting. So the next item on the agenda kind of gets us back to where we were sort of starting from by the published agenda, and that is comprehensive plan update and amendment, primarily related to changes required by the city becoming a B city, correct?
Yes, that's.
And we previously reviewed that on September 17th, at our meeting on September 17th. And so we're near to sort of finalizing, we're here tonight to vote on finalizing those changes. Planning Officer Collette, comments?
Yeah, just want to add that, some of the other things in the amendments involved making changes according to the state's recommendations and also their requirements. For example, they require us to state that we're going to maintain a minimum percentage of affordable housing in the city. So we put that at 15%. And also they require us to add a statement that will direct majority of our capital investments into our growth area. And also that we will review our 5-year capital improvement plan annually to make sure it's aligned with the comprehensive plan. And then some of the recommendations they made were primarily for the natural resources and environmental sections of the comprehensive plan, just adding in some clarifications about things and making sure that, we won't plant invasives and things like that. So that was the gist of it.
Chair,
Thank you. Member Basnet?
question for Anya.
Yes, please.
Do we, maybe I missed it in the notes, but do we have a benchmark for what is considered affordable housing?
So this, this statement in particular really just means affordable as in subsidized housing. So when we look at what we have now, which is roughly 10 to 12%, we're just looking at housing that's funded either from Maine State Affordable Housing, or Maine State Housing Authority, or it's subsidized through other entities. And that data comes from our assessing department or it comes from the state.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question with regard to that as well. The 15, it says 15% is the goal, right? Do you have any idea how we're going to accomplish that?
Yeah, we have various strategies and there, many of them listed in the comprehensive plan to attain that. We've been doing some of those things already through reducing barriers to creation of housing, allowing more innovative housing types like co-living dormitories. Also our 2024 housing study that it's in the works, but they do have some preliminary recommendations out. Involves things like, providing more subsidy to housing, developing more partnerships with housing developers, and kind of things outside the box. Those are all ways that we get to that goal of 15%.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There's no particular penalty or anything, it's just a goal we're trying to reach.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other board member questions on this item? I would open it to public comments, but there is absolutely nobody to ask, so I will not open public comments. Any other board discussion before we get to a motion on this item? And the motion would generally be, if we don't have any other comments, would generally be recommendation to City Council ought to pass. Member Basnet?
Item G that states investigate techniques to preserve farmland, including disincentives for conversion of agricultural land, conservation or cluster subdivisions, and transfer of development rights. We've converted an awful lot of farmland to solar arrays in the past 3-4 years. How does this statement, which is letter G, tie into that plan? Are we going to try to curtail turning arable land into solar farms?
So there's a couple strategies in the comprehensive plan that address that. There are ways and situations in which you can co-locate solar with farmland. There's actually certain crops that grow even better under solar, and also some types of grazing, animal grazing can work out well for that. But there are some other strategies in there that do talk about that, and talk about how we don't want to lose prime farmland soils to solar farms and other types of development. So that is already addressed.
Are any of the co-uses such as farmland and solar, do we have any case studies active in the state of Maine?
Yep, I think actually there was a BDN article maybe last year about blueberry crops. They were experimenting with blueberry crops under solar panels and actually had some success with that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for the clarification.
yeah.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions? If not, a motion on this item? Yes, Member Boucher.
I move that we make the recommendation of ought to pass for the following, for the proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan. Do I need to list them, or is this sufficient? Yeah.
Thanks, Sufficient. Didn't want to call it an amendment number or anything like that, right? Okay. Member Basnet with a second, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And a roll call vote on that? Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marham?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so unanimous approval of the most recent comprehensive plan update and amendment. Thank you. So now we move to other business, because there is no really new business, so to speak. The first thing on there is the pre-approved buildings plan presentation, which Planning Officer Colette will give us a scoop on.
Yeah, so I think there might have been a miscommunication. I think Development Director Krieg and architects were gonna come back with a second draft for you later. And so we'll actually need to take this off the agenda for tonight, so I apologize for that.
Okay, that's all right. Can we make comments anyway?
Yeah, sure.
So, I happened to look at it, I liked it, I'm not sure why it's being pulled, but it doesn't really matter. The one thing I thought was missing in those drawings was there didn't seem to be the basements weren't addressed, and we often have basements, but not always, as we've discussed. But if there are no basements, I didn't see a lot of space set aside for utilities or laundry. And so I would hope that they would address whether it's intended to be a slab on grade building or a building with a basement, and if either way, I would hope they would address where there would be utilities and laundry facilities. Because I didn't see that in those, but otherwise I thought they were fairly nice, typical buildings that I think a lot of developers would be interested in using.
Okay.
But otherwise, any other board members want to comment on those at all before we move on to the next item? No?
These are all in frost walls, right?
Yes, I'm pretty sure they incorporated that.
That would be advantageous in our climate, correct, for
Yeah.
stability purposes?
For sure.
Instead of just a slab?
Yeah. Okay, no need to vote on this item, and that's going to come to us again. So the next item is a discussion on the land use code update meetings. That is also planning officer collect.
Yes. So this is just an update on what's happening for the land use code update. So we had a meeting, a kickoff meeting with the consultants a few weeks ago, with a team that's made up of planning staff, other people from community and economic development primarily, and legal. And so going forward, we are going to have several neighborhood meetings coming up in November and early December. We're basically combining our public engagement part of our public engagement for this process with the public engagement that our community development folks are doing for their consolidated plan, just to avoid exhausting people with all the different engagement activities. And and also at the same time with these neighborhood meetings, we're going to be asking people about complete streets initiatives, because that was a strategy in the comprehensive plan and our climate plan, and we kind of want to get that rolling. So in those meetings, we're going to introduce them to the land use code update project, and try to get their initial feedback on the code, and different aspects of development, and review the comprehensive plan and things like that. Also in November, the consultants will be coming to you to get your perspective on the code. They'll be going to the Business and Economic Development Committee and other commissions like the Historic Preservation Commission, and also having a bunch of stakeholder meetings with local developers, local real estate groups, and other interest groups. And let's see, after this initial public engagement period, they're going to take all that feedback. They're going to take the comprehensive plan, our current code, and all the other plans we've done, and come up with a technical review report, basically an audit of the code, to really talk about what needs to change, where our current code is not working well and where it is working well. And then based on that, they'll be coming out with a draft of the new code that will go through an extensive public engagement process, also come back to you, and then another draft, and I think 2 drafts total, and then they'll come back for a final draft later. So it's going to be a pretty extensive process over the next 2 years. So we're really just getting started with these initial meetings in November and December.
That was kind of my question too, Anya, is, so just looking at the land use code update project schedule, it shows in the first 1 to 2 months, kickoff meeting, branding, website, and review of existing ordinances and plans. So that's happening right now, that's kind of where we're
Yes.
at today.
We're working on a website with them, just working on the finishing touches before it goes
Yeah.
public.
And then the next step, which you've been kind of emphasizing, I think, is the stakeholder interviews, which will be coming up in November and December, I think.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you. I don't know what page that was on, but that's in the packet. If you guys are looking for that project schedule, it's in the packet. Any other board member questions on this item? Yes.
I just want to point out that I really like the banner with the QR code that's downstairs, and I had to come in and do my voting thing, and I took my picture with the QR code, and I went ahead and signed up for 2 meetings. So,
Yeah.
nice.
Our community development people did that.
That's
So.
really great. I don't know how many people actually stopped to look at it because I had to go back and find it, but.
Yeah, very useful.
I think people used it at the Saturday thing.
Yeah, we got a few takers.
Yeah. I used it. If you haven't, I don't know that you would use it at home, but you just go to the website, the city website, really.
Yes.
But one of the things they had there on a week ago Saturday at the art show was the changes they were talking about with the traffic downtown, and they're encouraging anyone to have input on that. So if you haven't done that, I encourage you to. It's interesting stuff.
Do we have a projected cost on those changes?
On land use code update?
On that traffic pattern downtown with the roundabouts?
I think it was supposed to be.
I don't know that we've gotten that far yet.
I spoke with the lady who, at because we were right next to her, and
Right.
so I ended up taking the survey too. And she explained to me the benefit that they're proposing, because the state will come in and take a big portion of the cost, because apparently it overlaps with some city projects of having to re-pipe
Right.
that whole area. So they're paying for if they do the roundabout or the different curb changes or things like that. And then that would have the added bonus of the pipes would, that section, they would be paying for it to be dug up, I guess. It seemed like they were presenting it as a benefit.
Yeah, the state's applying for a raise grant from I think the federal government to pay for all these improvements, so.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, good. Sorry about that. That was kind of got off subject there, but anyway, that's good stuff too. So that's it on the updates to the land use code. Any other questions on that item before we move on to the next one? Which, if not, is updates to the planning board bylaws. And I'm the cause of this trouble, at least a little bit. And so, I think I mentioned it before, but we had an old set of bylaws, we really kind of got out of using them, I think, and then I took a shot at some updates last spring, and then they sort of sat a bit, and then they made a big circulation through the office here, I think, 2 or 3 times, and got knocked around a little bit more. And so we've made a bunch of changes, which are in your packets. And I think it makes the bylaws, I mean, some of what was in the bylaws just wasn't at all how we were doing things. You know, it was old stuff that was from whenever they used to do things differently. And so some of it's fairly obvious changes, some of it not so much, a little bit more subtle. There's a couple legal things in there that are different. And I also had some changes that came to me this past weekend, which I know the staff with that as well. But I guess before we get into that, Planning Officer Collette, would you like to, or Solicitor Innes, either of you want to speak on the bylaws at all?
I don't really have a lot to say, other than just, like you said, me and Anne and Grace and Dave all had input into it. And so just so you can see all the changes that were made, I did include the red line version and then the clean version, just so it was more clear. But I was gonna just bring up the one change I will make to this based on discussion with you,
Yep.
which was to section 9 in the public hearing section. We're gonna change the wording to shall hold a public hearing as required by the code of ordinances, just to make it clear when a public hearing is held. So just pretty minor change.
Yeah, I brought that up because there's been a little discussion recently about, public hearings and how much is opening up, what we're trying to open up for discussion, and that's sometimes hard to define. And so, the purpose of adding that wording in there is to try and, specify that when we're opening up a public hearing, it is not to hear any complaint about any old thing, it's to hear what we are discussing on that, for that particular item, which is as specified in the Code of Ordinances, so. There's that. I had brought up a couple of other issues. One, I had asked Solicitor Innes to look into, which she, I think, said she was going to. I think that's the way we left that. The ex parte thing, you know, you guys understand you're not supposed to talk about stuff, you know, with each other or outside the meeting, particularly with regard to an application that's in process. And if you read what that says in the bylaws, you know, it's pretty clear when we have an application, you know, we shouldn't be talking about it, but it doesn't really say when that ends. And we've talked about that a little bit in the past, but it's very sort of a gray area. Well, when are we done with an application so that we can then, you know, say a neighbor asks you 6 months later, you know, how'd that go or whatever, you know, can you talk to them or not talk to them? And so we're trying to get a little bit better definition of when does that end, that ex parte doesn't matter anymore with regard to a project. So I kind of asked Grace Innes to look into that, and she is going to. And then there was another issue I had with some wording. It's always a bit confusing sometimes to know how many members are the majority when we were voting on something. Most of the time it doesn't matter because, you know, we're usually unanimous or close to unanimous. But I think, and if you look at the wording, it can be confusing. If you look at the wording in the bylaws, it seems wordy. But part of that is because there's a lot of different situations. I'm not sure we can do anything to make that better, but we were looking into that as well. Are there any other, you guys have any other member brush?
I have just a couple comments and questions. What's Article 5 on the meetings, Section 8, in the introductions you have acceptance of an agenda. That's something new. We don't do that now. So that's just a comment. We don't go say, have a vote or any discussion of the agenda before we start the meeting or before we carry on.
Where is it? The introduction.
Acceptance of agenda. And then there's another item right below that, which is confirmation of meeting of voting members. Is that, what does that mean?
I mean, Reese does that pretty often when he clarifies who's the alternate member, whether they're voting or not.
Right.
So I would think it's something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what that means. That's the way I
That's how I
interpret
read
it,
it.
is, you know, it's part of my job, when and we have a good group who are mostly here like we are tonight, but the alternate member needs to know whether they are voting or not, for any meeting. And Janet knows because she was the alternate member, right?
In Hawaii,
Yeah.
when I was in Hawaii.
And so, yeah, and I put you on the spot.
You
that's
sure
right.
did, because you made me
That's
vote
right,
first.
yeah.
It was-
So if we don't have enough members, the alternate member, assuming they're in attendance, becomes a voting
Yeah, I
member.
understand.
And that's what that is, so, yeah.
Okay, I have another comment on a different section. It's on the next Article 6, decisions, Section 14, Item C. It looks like it says the last line in that says, for votes on recommendations in city council, board members should state the reasons for their vote. Yeah, somewhere else in here it says, or maybe preceding that, it says that you have to give a reason for a no vote, but this indicates you have to do that for both the yes and the no votes.
Yeah, the sentence before is the one that says, a no vote.
Well, how about yes votes? We don't do that for yes votes, though. Is it kind of understood? It's awkward, but is it just understood if you?
Yeah.
So I think I actually intentionally kept that in there because I should mention this at your next time you vote on the zone change, but I did think it would be helpful if board members stated why you feel it does conform to the comprehensive plan, the zone change. Just because, like, there was a recent zone change when I went to the city council, they asked about the one no vote, and I said, I think it was you, Chair Perkins, didn't feel it met the comprehensive plan. I thought it would be helpful to have other members state why they felt it did conform, just so city council has a clear view of the different opinions.
Member Basnet?
This is just for zone changes or for every vote?
Code of, anything that goes to the city council, so that would be our code changes or our zoning changes. It wouldn't be for land development permits.
So would the caveat be if there is a dissenting vote, then we have to give explanation for our yays or nays? Or is it, and then otherwise it would just be assumed that it just clearly complies? Or is it just always, you think?
I think it's especially when there's a nay vote, just because city council is always more curious in those situations. Typically, when you all unanimously approve something, they're like, okay, but it's up to you, these are your bylaws and it's how you want to run the meeting, so.
Chair,
Member Basnet?
I think we're adding complexity on the yay side of things that doesn't necessarily need to be there. I'm in full favor of giving an explanation if it was a no vote. But a yay vote is going to add time and complexity to a system that has already grown in complexity over the last 2 years. That's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I agree. I think maybe that last sentence, we can consider striking that, so we don't have.
But we still can give a reason if we
Yeah.
want to.
Yes.
If you wanted, yeah.
And knowing that they appreciate it, I'm happy to, in that situation, do it. But I don't think it makes sense to require it. I can go along with that.
Except for a no vote, right?
Well, then no for sure,
Yeah.
yeah. They have to make some sort of justification.
Yeah, you good cutting that out of there, Anya?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that too. I'm kind of on the fence on this. I guess that, as long as everyone understands the purpose, it is helpful. And I think we want, I've sort of asked planning officer Colette to get back to us, with whatever the city council does regarding planning things, because I think we need that back and forth, the feedback from them, and they need it from us as well. So I think it's important that when we vote on things that are going to them, if there's any discourse or concern or things that you would like to make sure that they are aware of, it's good to say it. That's really what it means, I think. Whether it's a yes or a no, but certainly if it's a no, I think it's important for them to hear, so. And it's important for Anya to hear and also for Sarah to hear so that it can be recorded, so.
Thank you.
And so Member Brush, was that all you had?
Yes.
And that first one that you brought up, did we leave that in there? This is going back to section 8, introductions, acceptance of the agenda. We don't do that, really.
Yeah, I'll take that out.
Yeah. There is some words in there, I can't remember what it says, but something to the effect of, if we mess with the agenda, we can have a vote. And certainly if you all think that, we're changing the agenda like I did tonight, and you would rather it not, or you would like to have some input on that, please say so. I think that's really why that's in there, so that the chair just doesn't go berserk and do stuff for the agenda. But generally, we stick with it. There are occasions where Anya contacts me if she has questions or concerns, or we discuss something over the phone sometimes before a meeting, just to have some, back and forth on the agenda, but mostly, we stick with what the staff gives us. So. Okay.
One item I saw
Yeah, no,
that I
go
would
ahead.
suggest. It's on the officers and the election of the officers. It doesn't describe how we vote our officers in. Oh, so Article 2, Section 2,
Okay.
or so I believe. It just says, sort of, you can nominate. And I know this isn't an issue for us, or hasn't been in the years, but, that I've been on the board. But so if there was a three-way, like 3 people in the election, do we do a runoff? And does there have to be basically, do we have to have a majority approval, or imagine there's 3 nominees, somebody wins with like 2 votes, or like 3 votes or something, and that's not a majority of the board. I mean, this is a small thing, but I just wanted to put that out there for.
Yeah, no, let me say, because there was more in there, and I didn't really ask the staff, maybe you can tell me why that got changed, but I had imagined, I struggle a little bit too with how we do things. I sort of imagined maybe what do they call it, a paper ticket sort of voting system where everyone has a piece of paper and you just write down whoever you vote for. We nominate publicly, but then you write down whoever you vote for, and one of the staff members just looks at it, counts it up and says, okay, you won the chair or whatever. And it's, that way there's no pressure, there's no public, shame or anything like that, it's all just done that way. That was in there and it got taken out by one of the staff, I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll defer to legal, but I'm not sure that's legal. So,
Yeah, it's like a FOA thing, just so that everybody knows what everybody's doing. So we switched it to a roll call vote just because we just want to make sure that we're out in public
Not
about
cheating
what
the
we're
system.
doing. Yeah,
Haven't discovered a way to cheat the system.
Oh, I see,
yeah.
So,
yeah, I'd be
yeah,
suspicious
so the
Yes.
publicity
if we
is
don't have
important,
a view of what people wrote.
for the sake of shame, I guess.
I don't mind voting, I just mean, and just imagine there's 3 or 4 people who are nominated and they're all in the same election. And 2 people get tie, or one person wins with 2 votes, with 3, and the other person loses with 2, and the other person, I don't know, whatever, the numbers stack up and it's not a majority. Do we do a runoff until we get 4 votes for somebody? That's basically all I was
I
getting.
think at this point, if that happened, and as you suggest, I think it's pretty unlikely, but
Yeah,
it could,
exactly.
it certainly could. And if it did, then I think the chair would have to step in, the existing chair would have to step in and say, okay, well, let's do this. And consulting with staff to make sure we were staying legally. And, whether it was a runoff or whether, we found a different way, or whether somebody just politely said, no, you do it, I don't wanna do it, or whatever.
Exactly, yeah, the stakes are pretty low.
I imagine we're all adults, we
I
can figure
agree.
that out,
Yeah,
but.
sure.
Somebody's gonna want the position.
Yeah,
No one is, yeah.
That got left
There's
in
no
there,
mention if
obviously.
there's nobody who wants to do it, who
Yeah.
has to do it.
There's it did, we are asking, do you want to be nominated? And you can say, I don't want to be nominated, so I think that's fair, so. Any other comments, questions? Member Maher?
Yes, this may be just a confusion on my part, but at the end of Article 1, there is reference to the clerk. Is that city clerk? Because I don't think the planning board has a clerk.
yes, that's the
Right.
city clerk. I can
City clerk, yeah,
clarify.
okay.
Which number was that?
It's
That Article 1, Section 1, planning board members, and it's,
current item H,
Okay,
proposed item I.
thank you. I'll clarify that.
anything else? So, we're not looking to vote on this tonight, at this point. I like this as a tool, I guess we're gonna put it together and just hand it out, we don't really need to vote on it anyway, do we, at this point, or would you like to, do you think that would be better?
No, well, first of all, the bylaws say that you have to put a notice of it on one agenda and then you'll vote
Okay.
on the next, but also I'm gonna add in the clarifications that we talked about, so,
So we'll look at it again.
yes.
Yep, okay, and then vote on it, and hopefully get this all updated by the end of the year, so starting the new year, we'll have a new set of bylaws with updates in them, so. I particularly like it for new members, because I think sometimes new members don't understand how we operate, and this is really how we operate.
Just a question, are the bylaws something that the city council should approve?
No, they're typically just voted on by the board, it's
Okay.
not written into the code of ordinances, so.
Okay. No other comments on the bylaws. The next thing on the agenda is not on the agenda, so I missed another thing here, but there was a article in the Bangor Daily News regarding the Aroma Joe's project. And so I would ask Solicitor Innes to just fill us in on that. I wanted everyone to just be updated as best as possible so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, so Bangor Daily News published an article about Hanover Associates, which was one of the opponents to the Aroma Joe's project. They are in a lawsuit against the city now. They have filed a lawsuit against us. And at the time of the article, we had not been served. We have still not been served. We did receive the complaint in the mail on Friday, and honestly, I haven't had time to look at it yet. So we don't have like much of an update for you. My current plan is to put an executive session on the next meeting and give you guys like a full update of what exactly is going on with that. At the moment, me and Dave are working on retaining counsel for that, so, yeah. Any questions? I mean, I just wanted to, real quick, also remind you guys that pending litigation is confidential, so just kind of keeping everything.
Did you say retaining counsel?
Yeah,
Isn't David counsel?
yeah, I am too, but we do retain outside counsel for litigation a lot because it takes so much time and effort to do something like that, and since we have to do the day-to-day things in the city, we typically farm it out to outside counsel for things like this.
Is that an appeal or something different?
It's an appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah, an appeal for the decision of the planning board.
So the term suit in this case is really a application to appeal.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's to the Board of, the Board of Appeals, right? Or is it separate? Did this go to the Board of
Land
Appeals?
development goes straight to the Superior Court.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, so we will get you a full update though, once we get everything worked out, but since it came in, I think it came in on Friday at like 3 p.m., so we were running around the office and trying to figure it out, so.
So if the complainant should lose the case, do we get compensated for our outside legal expense?
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, it just depends on what happens with the case.
You have to, in essence, put that as part of your,
Yeah, we would put that as part of our response back, or,
so you probably will.
likely, yeah.
Yeah.
It really depends though, on what.
And we're spending money that,
Yeah, and you know, I brought this up just so we're all on the same page, and just as a reminder that we can't talk about it. But I wanted to be sure that all the board members here had sort of the latest, best information as we have, so thank you, Grace, for that. I'm not gonna get into details because Member Meager has asked me not to, but I just want to thank him for his service, because this is his last meeting, and I really appreciate the work he's done. He helped me out when I was a new member. He's one of the senior members here, and he helped me out when I was a new member with just, you know, you guys all know, but when you come on this board, it seems confusing, and you seem lost a lot, and you don't know what you're supposed to raise your hand for or vote for, or how meetings are supposed to work, and it takes a long time to get that stuff figured out. We have sort of started a mentor program, which is in our bylaws, by the way, if you saw that, and we're gonna try that with Jennifer, our newest member. And so, you know, Don wasn't officially a mentor of mine, but I certainly looked to him a lot of times. He's a wordy guy, so he did, as much as I think he thought that was difficult for me, it was helpful for him to share his thoughts, and so I just thank him for that, and wish him well. And I'll move on from that, and I want to remind everyone that the next meeting that we would normally have is on voting day, And so we will not have the meeting that we normally would have on voting day, which means our next meeting will be the middle of November, not the 1st of November. And the only other thing I know of that sort of got mentioned this evening, and I didn't know if you guys wanted to dive into it anymore or not, is 2 of the board members went to the Maine Municipal Association training this past week. And, that's usually interesting and sometimes enlightening and often a confirmation of what we get at our annual training with Grace. But if anyone wants to add anything else on that, I'm happy to open up the floor to that or any other thing this evening. But that's really it on the agenda for this evening, so.
I did want to speak on the November meeting real quick. Because you had asked about whether we would have a lot of projects on that meeting.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We won't, I don't think we'll have a lot of land development projects, but some of the agenda items are racking up, so I just want to list everything that I think is going to be on there, and then kind of let you all decide whether you want to have a second meeting in November, and then we can sort out scheduling. But so far, we have voting on the bylaws, and that may not take long, since we've already discussed it. Probably the pre-approved building plan designs, I'm not positive on that one though. Executive session on Aroma Joe's, a zone change, the land use code consultants will be here to talk to you about that. And then we probably will have a land development project or 2, I'm not sure yet. So that's what I'll slate for November, potentially.
That's a good 2-hour meeting.
Yeah, it's a good 2-hour meeting, but it's not impossible. Would anyone rather have a second meeting? In November?
No.
So you're not gonna add anything to that?
She'll never promise that.
Yeah, I mean, the land development code projects are always kind of up in the air. Zone changes, I don't think I could add one unless somebody came in before this Friday. It's always a possibility, but I don't think we're gonna have another one come in.
In my opinion, as you've explained it, it seems doable, but if we start adding, the regular agenda type items, I think that could be.
Yeah. Well, that was my concern with originally, skipping that one meeting, but it seemed like the majority wanted to do that, so. How about if we leave it, that we'll do it in one meeting, and if more items come up that you're not aware of this evening, you can send out a mass email and we can take another swing at it.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody?
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I think most everything, I know the executive session will take a little bit of time, but Grace can promise to keep it brief, which she probably will have to anyway. Then it shouldn't take too much time. We do have to vote on executive session and kind of make it official and close ourselves off somewhere, but other than that, it shouldn't take that much extra time. I don't see the bylaws taking a whole lot of time. We've talked about them a couple times here already, and you've had them in front of you a bit. I don't know about the consultant. I would almost think if we had to, we could push the consultant off possibly. But you want our input, and they want our input, and that's important,
So
so.
they're gonna be here in front of us?
Yeah, they're gonna be planning to be here in town for
Yeah,
that, so.
that's the one thing you have no idea how long a consultant would take, but you could ask them to stay brief, I guess.
Well, yeah, it all depends on what the feedback you all have on the land development code is.
Yep.
So that's really what it's about.
Yep. So maybe thinking about it ahead of time and organizing thoughts might be helpful on that one. Yep. Okay.
We'll stick with that and I'll let you know if anything changes.
Fair enough. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Anything else tonight? We good?
What we were gonna say about the training, and I already kind of said it before the session, but it makes you realize just how lucky we are in Bangor to have the staff and all the input and guidance and structure, and that not our bylaws, but our code of ordinances, very clear, documented, and spelled out. Hearing some of the input from the other representatives from the other towns in Maine that were sitting near me, it's not always as clean as that or as simple as that, and there's a lot of room for interpretation, it seems. So it was, it was also very reassuring. Some of the steps that were taken in the past year and a half from since 2 years since I joined to redesign the voting process definitely proved out against what the staff at the MMA were talking through, and I was seeing a lot of it in the work that we do, and I felt really confident about that and pleased, so it all sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
At the time when we were instituting all this, I was a little bit, I was just taking it on, but I didn't understand necessarily the impetus for it, but this has added a lot of structure, and I think the team has even cleaned up the large version of it and made it much more manageable. So it was all pretty good.
Good.
Yeah, and it was interesting, I didn't have much exposure to the Board of Appeals side of it, but that was half of the meeting was about Board of Appeals, so that was interesting to see their process and some of the jargon that goes into that. And it was definitely, yeah, it was a nice experience, and if anyone hasn't done it, it's not so bad.
Yeah, and you can do it by Zoom or in person.
Yeah, in person wasn't bad. It was a bit of sitting, but it was nice to have some interpersonal chit chat with other people and hearing their stories, basically. Talking shop a little bit about, you know, the FOA was like a real big topic. People really just wanted to spin into a lot of discussions around FOA concerns.
A lot, yeah. There was a lot of discussion on that.
Anything else on that, Jen? Yeah.
It was useful, it
Yeah.
was good information, like you said, it was half Board of Appeals, half.
Yep, that's the way they always do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just somewhat annoying, but you do learn something
Oh,
that
yeah,
way.
definitely.
And you hit on a lot of the same topics like ex parte and stuff like that. Yep. Good, okay, anything else before we close off?
I want to remind you all to sign the decision letter.
Oh yeah, sign the decision letter, there's always something to sign before you leave. Pat Dawn on the back. All right, we are adjourned, thank you.